of the three rookie quarterbacks, I think that CJ Stroud did the most to address the concerns that people had about him. And I think all three of them did some really good things at times. But ultimately, the concerns about Bryce Young are, hey, he's really tiny. And we don't know for sure yet whether that's going to be a big deal or not. I think he did a lot of the things we already knew he could do. Anthony Richardson, freakishly gifted and talented physically, much smarter, I think, and more advanced than perhaps some people gave him credit for, yet has a lot of issues with erratic throwing motion, which leads to erratic footballs, which will lead to interceptions based on what I've seen so far in the preseason. And CJ Stroud is not a finished product, but I think some of the concerns about him, how would he do without these freakishly gifted wide receivers that he had at Ohio State? I think we saw that he's pretty capable of operating without them. If anything, he can make the same throws. I just don't know if he has the receivers right now that are developed enough and talented enough to actually handle some of the good passes that he makes. Can he process mentally? So far, against relatively vanilla defenses, he showed progression in that, and I thought he looked very snappy and more confident, more decisive as it went along. So I feel good about that. Now, this is very early in the race. I'm not saying that he all of a sudden becomes the best quarterback in this class or anything, but I felt good about the progression he made, and I think some of the concerns that people had about him, based frankly on the fact that he went to Ohio State and was thrown to often awesome receivers, I think he's allayed some of those concerns. I want to go through and watch all of his passes from last night and take a look at some of the good things. A couple of things that are still reason for concern, but also just a lot to build on. And he's officially the starting quarterback. I know everybody was super concerned about whether or not he would be the starting quarterback, but raise a glass. Your concerns are over. He's the starting quarterback. So let's get started. All focused. I like that D'Amico lets these guys dress casual before the games. There's nothing as a big man worse than wearing a suit, which is like 19 yards of fabric when you're as big as I was in August on a bus and on a plane and then elsewhere, especially in New Orleans. Focused, nice headphones. Okay. How's CJ Stroud going to handle pressure in his face? I think that this looked like a cleaner pocket in real time on television than I realized at the time. But Shaq Mason kind of took this guy down as the guy almost beat Shaq Mason, and they both go to the ground, which created a much muddier pocket. And we have what is really a beautiful pass that Nico had to slow down for it a little bit. But I also do think that he wasn't really in a position to high point it there, but could have been more aggressive going after it. And it was also a really nice play by the defensive back. But the ball placement there, could he have pushed it down the field a little bit more? Sure. But if you look right there, just watch the arc on this thing. It's a beautiful football. Okay, 3rd and 7. Again, pressure. Boy, there was more pressure. Running for it. On the broadcast, they said, hey, could CJ have actually run for the first down here? I don't think there's a chance in hell he could have run for it. On the run, pressure in the pocket, good reason to scramble there. And what's he do? I mean, Robert Woods is more concerned really right there with, I feel like trying to draw the pass interference instead of actually focusing on catching a very, very catchable ball. I mean, look at that. That's really good ball placement. The defender is not going to catch it. I feel like, as I've been watching a lot of baseball, obviously, I was waiting for the StatCast catch probability to come up on the screen, which they don't have in preseason football like they do in regular season baseball. But this would be one of those ones where if he had made the catch, you would have been disappointed because they would have said catch probability 55%. So this is where I'm getting to some of the questions that we had about CJ Stroud and whether he'd be able to make the same throws without having guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. He's making those throws. He's throwing guys open. It's just that he doesn't necessarily right now have the guys who are always capable of making those catches, at least, especially when Tank Dell's not on the field. Okay, this one, Dalton Schultz, like this is going to be a good combo. I think the thing to note here is with CJ having the knock against him that, okay, he was going to wait and see if guys were open before he threw to him. Like, Dalton Schultz is just coming back on this whip route here. And look at where CJ's arm is. Like, he's cocked and ready to go. He's about to let the ball go. Like, he started the throwing motion before it was exactly clear that Dalton Schultz was going to be open. He just trusted that he was going to be open. He also was comfortable enough knowing that that linebacker wasn't in position to make a play on the ball. Ends up being a really nice throw and catch. I feel better about Dalton Schultz after being somewhat frustrated with him for not always knowing exactly what the hell to do. There we go. Play action, converging routes that free up Nico Collins. Important thing here is it was play action. He's shown a few times that he's got a really good feel for when the blitz is coming and what that means for the coverage and where he's going to have to go with the ball. Play action under center, which he did a little bit in college, but he's going to be doing a lot more of in this offense. The tricky thing about it is that the quarterback turns his back to the defense and has to figure out exactly when he whips around if he's seeing what he thought he was going to see. In the preseason here, he saw what they had showed pre-snap. That'll get more complex in the regular season, but he turns around.
Yes, yeah.
And then here we have D'Amico.
And CJ will be our week 1 starter.
He was just as excited about it as we were. Okay, as far as that goes, not naming CJ the starter in the entire preseason until the very end. Bobby Slowick, a couple times, both in an interview that I saw from when he was in San Francisco and then one time in the preseason this year in the offseason, had mentioned that because so many coaches have run this system and because they've done it with so many quarterbacks, there's kind of a template for how you bring a guy along in the system. And what I compared it to this morning with Sean Pendergast was, if you're training a pilot, you know, you might have the best future pilot on earth, but you're going to go through each step along the way and be sure that he's proficient before he finally gets his pilot's license. You're not going to say after 2 weeks of training, oh, wow, you've really got this. You've nailed it. Here are the keys to the F-18. I'll go kill some people. You got to follow the process. And I think that's what the Texans were doing. I think if Davis Mills, for instance, had come out and just blown CJ Stroud away in the first week or two, they still would have followed this process. If it were a genuine competition and both the young guys sucked and Case Keenum were awesome, they would have followed the process, even though Case has already kind of been through the process already. So I was okay with it. And I think it was something for people on sports radio to talk about or on social media or message boards, if those still exist, that it was much ado about nothing and something that we all knew was going to end up being okay. But it is on to the Ravens. I'm Seth Payne. I played for the Houston Texans, played 10 years in the NFL. Please like and subscribe if you like what you just saw, and tell a friend. Thanks, everybody.